Hello everyone. Welcome to this session dedicated to the configuration of your client instance. Today, in a series of short little videos, we will cover the main setup objects of client to help you have a better insight and understanding of their purposes in your system. Let's kick this off by looking at the Client Config App. Welcome to the Client Config App. This app can easily be found at the top left corner of your screen in the 9 dots called the App Launcher. By clicking this, it's going to expand a menu in which you can search for objects you have access to, items, or application. An app is simply a collection of items that are put together to serve a particular function. In this case, a client. We put all of these setup objects together, and today we will go through each of them to simply update data so that your client instance is behaving and answering your business requirements. These are presented in a sequence that we will follow because they're all related together and because of the dependency or interdependency of these objects. So let's start with the holiday schedules. Holiday schedules and holiday dates are closely linked together. Let's look at this. A record of holiday schedules only requires a name to exist. Once this is created, you click on Save. Here's an example of a US holiday schedule record that only contains a name. Under this object, you will find all of the holiday dates. Each of these dates will represent a statutory holiday an organization or resource will be entitled to. If you want to create a new holiday dates, you simply click on New. You enter the name, you put the relationship to the proper calendar, the proper holiday schedule, the date, and the hours worked that should be considered for this holiday. We strongly recommend creating a lot of holiday dates in advance. In this case, it starts from 2020 all the way up to 2026. By following that naming convention, you will save a lot of time and you won't need to recreate all of these holiday dates each year. The organization object. A record of this object will represent a business entity you're invoicing from. Basically, who's providing the work. If we look in this client instance, I only have one organization. In this record, the information of the first section is the name, the logo to be used when generating invoices. If I have many organizations, which one would be my default organization and the address. The two following sections are called Invoice Config and Invoice Formatting. The first one will hold options that will influence your billing cycle or default values on invoices to be generated. The second one will keep options that will dictate how invoicing information will be displayed on the PDF to be generated on these invoices. I will not go in the details of these two, they will be covered later. However, this section holds information about the default work schedule. This is really important as every project resource you will create related to this organization will inherit of this work schedule. Here we have 8 hours per day, 5 days a week of work schedule. You also have the link to the previously created holiday schedule, the calendar here, and the dates. Once again, the project resources that will be created related to this organization will also inherit of this holiday schedule. The last section entitled Accounting Connector will only be used if you're using an accounting connector and you're linking your client to your accounting system. On the right hand side, you'll find information such as which project resources are linked to this organization, did I create any invoices or any projects related to this organization. In this section, we will cover 3 setup objects that we like to put under the umbrella of segmentation object, only because they allow you to better filter and categorize your projects and project resources. None of them are mandatory, but they are just additional help for you to filter, especially when using client tools. Let's look at the possibilities you have. The first one is the practice object. In this case, I don't have any practices created. If I'd like to create a new record, I will only need a name. That's the only required field to create that practice. A practice could be a division, a market, a technology, or vertical that I like to use in my organization to better filter my projects. Same thing with region or location. They will only require you a name. The region records or the region object would be the taxonomy or the library of all region I like to filter my project with or my resources with. Same thing with location. They could maybe represent cities or states your organization have offices in. These three objects will be very useful, as I mentioned earlier, and will be used as filter on the resource planner or on the workspace, for example. Project roles is another taxonomy or library type of object. Each record of this object will represent a role your project resources will play on a project. Let's look at some examples. First, if you're creating a new record, the only information required will be what is the name of your role and is it active or not. That's it. Very simple. Here are some examples. As you can see, business analyst, customer, designer, developer, engagement lead, etc. These are not titles. These are not skills. They are maybe function that your project resources can play on a project. The project rate card object is very useful, especially if you're doing some time and expense projects. These will help you to manage the bill rate of your project resources all in one rate card. The only thing you need to do when you're creating a rate card is to provide the name of it and if it's active or not. Then this could be used, for example, to create a standard rate card per year, or you could have discounted rate cards, maybe with a 50% discount, whatever, having all your roles there. Per customer type, if you're working with nonprofits, for example, you want to bill at a different rate. Same thing per customer. Sometimes it's another possibility, or having one rate card to have all of your resource at the blended rate. So these are all use cases for the rate card. Here is the information you will find. So once you created the rate card, you will assign, and we recommend assigning all existing roles in your org to this rate card and create project rate card roles record and assign them the bill rate you want for each of them. This way, if you have an existing time and expense project going on, your resources that will log the hours, when these hours will be charged to the customer, this bill rate will kick in. That's the magic of the project rate card. Now that we have the roles, the function, and the segmentation, we need the people in. A record of project resource will represent all the people, internal or external, that will be involved in the delivery of services through projects. Let's look at some example here. So any employees, subcontractors, individual managing the projects, or assigned to a project, or assigned to a task, or needing to log time or expenses, they must exist as a project resource. Let's create a new project resource. Here, I would need to enter the name of the individual and link it, if possible, to an existing organization in my client instance. Remember, linking it to an organization will make the default value from the organization, such as work schedule and holiday schedule, bring them as default values on this project resource work schedule, which I will show a bit later on. Each project resource has to be linked to at least one project role. Yes, it will be possible in the future to have that project resource assigned to a different role, or having that project resource that plays different roles on the same project. That will all be possible, but that will be explained in another video. These four here fields are segmentation fields. So it's going to rely on the information you entered previously on practices, region, for example, and use them to better filter this project resource in reports, for example. The user field, this is going to be used if your individual has access to your Salesforce system. It means they have a license and a Salesforce user record is created. This field here is going to be a lookup and a link between that Salesforce user and your project resource record. Not mandatory, especially if you have resources that will never access your system. This field is not mandatory to be filled. The cost rate will represent the cost of this project resource for your organization. And the opposite, the bill rate, is going to be the amount, the hourly amount charged to your customer when this individual is logging time on a project, or billing time that will be invoiced on a time and expense project, for example. This self-explanatory field is active. So is this project resource currently active or not? Timesheet user checkbox. Does this project resource, will this project resource log time or used on my timesheet? Is he or is she a timesheet user? The external resource one is kind of a segmentation also, just to select if this project resource is out of your organization or not. You can check this. And the last one is going to be the topic of my upcoming session, video capsule on Placeholder. So I'm going to keep it for now. Just save and look at my Jimmy Bean new project resource. Here's the information I entered from a different UI that is assigned in the details of this project resource. And I can see a lot, and this is the way Salesforce works. So you've got the object, the project resource, and all the related object. So is this project resource linked to any projects, to any tasks? Does he or does she have any skills? So you'll see this in the relationship. If you scroll down a bit, obviously these were empty because nothing has been done yet. But it's interesting to see that you have some timesheets. But if you look closely, it's because all of the upcoming timesheets have been created for dates at which you will have holidays, right? So they're already created in advance. The other interesting thing is to look at the work schedule of the project resource. Each project resource has only one work schedule. If you click on this work schedule, you're going to see that here you already have hours on the for the work schedule, and these hours were pulled once again from its related organization. So the brainstorm box we had. Same thing for the holiday schedule. This is a default value that was brought at the creation of this project resource. The last here is a field called target utilization percentage. It's going to help you doing some calculation that we'll explain a bit later on. So this is the work schedule related to my project resource called Jimmy Bean that I just created related to my brainstorm box organization. Placeholder is a concept used at client to give you the possibility of assigning a not determined yet project resource for a specific role on a project. So let's look quickly at the project resource. We looked at it a bit previously. I don't know if you noticed, some of the project resource had some letters at the beginning here, and they are pretty generic. So in other words, when you are creating a project resource and you are clicking the placeholder here, we strongly recommend you to add a P at the beginning here as a naming convention and add the name of the related project role, because this placeholder is in fact a project resource, generic project resource for each role you enter in Client. So here in this list, I already created a list view called placeholders. And here you can see all of the placeholders that were created. So I've got all of my role and I created a project resource placeholder. And these will be used a bit later on, especially very useful when you will create project templates. So a project templates, you know that for this type of project, you will require a developer and an engagement lead all the time. You assign these placeholder, and later on, it will be possible for you to swap these placeholders with actual resource when you will identify which resource should take place or should be part of this project. Also, very useful for capacity management, because this will allow you to assign placeholders to maybe a pipeline project, something that is not confirmed yet, or something that is in the future that is not confirmed who is going to be assigned to the project, but at least you have that same specific role. So in your reports, you'll be able to understand the trends and you'll be able to flag in advance which which role are going to be required or very hot in the near future, and align your HR team for scouting accordingly to your needs. The other one that I wanted to bring to your attention, because I talked about naming convention, you saw maybe the C here, which is another possibility of creating your customer, right? Your customer can have a role for another need, which is linked maybe to having them handling or being part of some tasks on your project. So you could also create a project resource for your customer. Just the naming convention is a very useful recommendation we give to our customers. This next session is going to be dedicated to 3 setup objects that are similar in the concept that they are all taxonomy or library type of objects. Let's look at the first one, the time of types. So here each record would represent time of types that are recognized in your organization, either if they're paid or unpaid. Doesn't make any difference. You would need to click on new to create the time of type, provide the name, for example, parent leave, vacation, jury duty, and if they are included in utilization or not. So meaning that the hours that would be tracked against this time of type would create utilization hours in the future if this is something you want to calculate or not. This is how you create a time of type. The next one would be the billing types. So billing types is a bit different. It's the taxonomy. Once again, each record here, the whole billing types will represent the taxonomy of available billing methods for your organization that your organization will want to use to bill and invoice your customer services for services work. So here, if I click on new, it's possible for me to name my billing type. So billing type is more of a label, and you're going to select which billing method you want to link that billing type with. So I'm going to show you an example of one that is already being created in this org. For this company, we wanted to use the terminology of time and material instead of time and expense. But it's basically a time and expense billing method in the background. Client is calculating all of the numbers using this method. But in the front, when you are creating a new project, the users will be able to select between time and material or fixed fee. By the way, these 2 billing types or billing methods are the ones that are provided in the performance path, but you will always find all of the other billing method available if ever you want to do some tests or try some new billing methods for your organization later on. So they will always remain available even if they're not used currently. The expense types. So as you know, in Client, it's possible to create expense record linked to projects that can be later on submitted for approval by the user in the end to appear on the invoice for the customer or not. So on these expense, the user will be required to assign these expenses to any of the existing expense types. So this is the library of all the expense types you consider in your organization. So you need to create these expense types. Very easy. You click on new, but a bit similar, a bit different in terms of the information you need to provide. Of course, there's the name. So it's going to be maybe a airfare, lodging, meals. That's the expense type name. These two are default fields. So by default, is this expense type always billable or not billable? And is it always reimbursable or not? As I said, these are default values. They can be changed when you create the expense. The other one, however, receipt required, is really going to throw a little message if the user is not providing the receipt with his expense. So it requires the receipt in order to be saved. If there's no attachment, it will not save. The other one, include tax, is also another option if it's an active expense type or not. The category is going to be used mostly for mileage and fuel. So if you're not using mileage and fuel, you can ignore this field. And the limit obviously is if you have a limit per expense you create on this expense type. So basically that's how you create all of these taxonomy of types of records you will use in your client system a bit later on.